Have you ever heard of a wedding that turned into a nightmare, right at the moment when it was supposed to be the happiest day of someone's life? This is the story of Martha, a woman who prepared for her dream wedding for years, only to faint when she discovered what her husband-to-be, Daniel, was doing with her best friend, right before the ceremony. But this is not a simple story of betrayal. It is a story filled with secrets, school-day bonds, hidden conversations, family pressures, and one woman's decision to choose dignity over tradition. Martha was 32 years old, a strong, confident, and deeply principled woman. She was known among her friends as dependable, hard-working, and kind-hearted. She worked as a project manager at a mid-sized company, the kind of role that required patience, attention to detail, and a natural ability to lead people. Her colleagues often said Martha had a calming presence. Whenever a crisis came up at work, she didn't panic. Instead, she listened, analyzed, and offered a solution. That calmness also defined her personal life. She wasn't the type to rush into relationships. She believed that true love took time, that commitment was not just a word but a serious promise. Physically, Martha was striking. She wasn't the most glamorous woman in the room, but she had a natural beauty, soft brown skin, expressive eyes, and a smile that made people feel safe around her. She preferred simple dresses, clean makeup, and a natural look. Her beauty came from within, and everyone could feel it. But beneath that strong personality, there was one pressure Martha could not completely ignore: her age. At 32, in her community, people whispered behind her back, "When will Martha marry? She's getting older. She's successful at work, but failing at home." These comments hurt, but she rarely showed it. Daniel came into her life through a mutual friend. He was 34, tall, with sharp features and a confident walk. He worked in finance, a man who liked numbers, logic, and planning. At first glance, Daniel seemed like the perfect match for Martha. He was ambitious, family-oriented, and charming in social gatherings. Their relationship started slowly. Martha liked the fact that Daniel was consistent. He called her daily. He asked about her day. He listened to her dreams. He spoke about marriage within the first year, which made Martha feel secure. Friends described them as a power couple. Martha, the calm and composed planner, and Daniel, the confident go-getter. Together, they looked unstoppable. Martha's best friend was Sarah. They had known each other since childhood. Sarah was the kind of friend who always brought energy into the room. She was outgoing, fun-loving, and adventurous, the complete opposite of Martha's calm, composed nature. Sarah loved parties, fashion, and attention. She had dated a few men, but had never settled down. Unlike Martha, who was steady and private, Sarah thrived on social drama. But Martha loved her anyway. Their friendship was deep, with years of shared experiences. Sarah was the bridesmaid of choice when Martha and Daniel set their wedding date. It was not even a discussion. Martha trusted Sarah with everything. The months leading to the wedding were stressful. Martha was busy at work while also trying to manage the countless details: guest lists, catering, outfits, and family demands. Sarah stepped in, offering help. She joined Martha at fittings, food tastings, and vendor meetings. At first, it felt natural. That was what best friends did. But during these preparations, something subtle began to shift. Sarah and Daniel started talking more. At first, it was small. Casual jokes, laughter about the stress of planning, shared opinions on music or decor. Martha noticed, but she brushed it off. They're just getting along, she thought. What she didn't know was that Sarah and Daniel shared a history. One evening, as they sat going over the wedding seating arrangement, Daniel casually mentioned something that caught Martha off guard. You know, Sarah and I actually went to the same high school, he said with a half-smile. Martha froze. Wait, what? You two never mentioned that before. Sarah laughed lightly. Oh yeah, I didn't think it was important. We were in the same year. We used to hang out sometimes with mutual friends. It's been years, Martha. Martha tried to smile, but inside, something felt wrong. Why had Sarah kept this from her? Why had Daniel not mentioned it either? That night, Martha lay awake thinking. She told herself it wasn't serious. People forget to mention things. But in her heart, the first seed of doubt had been planted. As the wedding drew closer, the connection between Daniel and Sarah grew stronger. They laughed about old school memories, teachers they disliked, classmates they hadn't seen in years, funny incidents from school trips. Martha watched quietly. She wanted to be happy that her best friend and her future husband got along, but something about their closeness felt different. One evening, during a rehearsal, Martha caught Sarah looking at Daniel a little too long. Daniel's hand brushed Sarah's arm casually, and Sarah didn't pull away. Instead, she smiled. Martha felt her chest tighten. She wanted to believe it was nothing, but she knew better. The week before the wedding, Martha overheard a phone conversation. She had gone into the kitchen to grab a glass of water when she heard Sarah's voice from the living room. Yeah, Daniel, I'll be there tomorrow. Don't worry, Martha won't know. Martha froze. She held her breath, waiting. Sarah laughed and whispered something she couldn't catch. Then silence. When Martha entered the room, Sarah quickly hung up, smiling nervously. Oh, that was work. Nothing serious. Martha nodded, but her heart sank. That night, she prayed for clarity. She wanted to be wrong. Martha didn't confront them immediately. Instead, she observed. She noticed the way Sarah and Daniel's conversations stopped abruptly when she entered the room. She noticed the inside jokes she didn't understand. At one point, she walked into the bridal suite and found Daniel helping Sarah zip up her dress. They both laughed awkwardly when they saw her. It's not what it looks like, Daniel said quickly. But Martha's heart already knew. The night before the wedding, Martha sat alone in her room. She looked at her gown hanging neatly, her shoes polished, the jewelry ready. This was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. But her gut told her something was wrong. She whispered to herself, "Tomorrow will change everything." And she was right. The sun rose earlier than usual that Saturday morning. Birds chirped outside Martha's window, but she couldn't sleep. She had tossed and turned all night, her heart heavy with questions she couldn't voice out loud. Her mother, Mrs. Grace, knocked softly on the door. "Martha, my daughter, are you awake? We need to start preparing." "Yes, Mama, I'm awake," Martha replied, forcing a smile as her mother entered. Her mother hugged her tightly. "Today is your big day. God has answered our prayers." Martha nodded, trying to push aside her doubts. She wanted to believe her mother's words. She wanted this to be a day of joy, not suspicion. Relatives started arriving early. Aunties bustled around the house giving instructions. Cousins giggled and snapped photos. Uncles discussed logistics. The atmosphere was lively, filled with anticipation. But Martha noticed something. Daniel hadn't arrived yet. He had promised to come early to oversee the final touches at the hall. She picked up her phone to call him, but there was no response. "Don't worry," her father reassured her. "You know men. They don't like the stress of all these preparations. He will be there." Martha forced another smile, but inside she felt uneasy. Around 9:30 a.m., Sarah arrived at Martha's family house. She wore a satin robe, her hair tied up, makeup kit in hand. She looked radiant, her energy lighting up the room. "Martha! My bride!" she shouted, pulling Martha into a hug. "Today is your day, girl. You're finally doing it." Martha smiled faintly. She couldn't shake the memory of overhearing Sarah's secret call with Daniel, but she chose silence. As they got ready together, Sarah chatted endlessly about the decor, the guests, and how Martha would be the most beautiful bride in town. But Martha's mind was elsewhere. She studied Sarah's face, searching for any sign of guilt. By noon, they all headed to the wedding venue. The hall was stunning, decorated with white roses, golden drapes, and soft lights. The stage glittered with elegance. Guests filled the seats, the choir rehearsed in the corner, and ushers adjusted the arrangements. The hall buzzed with excitement. But Martha noticed Daniel and Sarah standing together near the back, laughing at something on his phone. When Daniel saw her watching, he quickly put the phone away. Martha's heart skipped. The ceremony begins. The pastor called everyone to order. The choir sang hymns as Martha walked down the aisle, her gown sparkling under the lights. All eyes were on her, but her own eyes searched for Daniel's. He smiled, looking perfect in his suit. But Martha couldn't shake the unease inside. The ceremony began. Prayers were said, vows exchanged. Family and friends clapped, some shedding tears of joy. Everything seemed fine. But Martha's instincts whispered otherwise. The whispered conversations. During the reception, Martha's suspicion grew. She noticed Sarah whispering in Daniel's ear, both of them laughing like old lovers. At one point, Sarah touched Daniel's shoulder as she leaned in. Martha's stomach churned. She glanced around, but nobody else seemed to notice, or maybe they chose not to. When Martha tried to join the conversation, Sarah quickly changed the topic. It was subtle, but clear. As the event continued, Martha realized Sarah and Daniel were missing. Panic rose in her chest. She excused herself and walked through the hall, pretending to be calm. She checked the kitchen, the back room, and the hallway. Finally, she heard muffled voices coming from one of the suites. Her hands shook as she reached for the door. Through the crack, she saw Daniel and Sarah inside. He was helping zip her dress. They were laughing softly. Her chest tightened. She stepped back, breathing heavily. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered to herself. But deep down she knew. Minutes later, Martha returned to the suite. Something inside told her she needed to see the truth for herself. This time, the door wasn't fully closed. She pushed it gently, her heart pounding. And there they were, Daniel and Sarah, locked in a kiss. His hands on her waist, hers around his neck. Martha gasped loudly. The sound made them break apart, their faces pale with shock. "Martha!" Daniel stammered. "It's not. Don't!" Martha shouted, tears streaming down her face. "Don't you dare lie to me!" Sarah tried to speak. "Martha, please, it's not what you think." "What I think?" Martha interrupted. "What I think is that my best friend and my husband-to-be betrayed me on my wedding day. And that's exactly what I see." Her voice echoed through the hallways. Guests began to gather outside the room, murmuring in confusion. "Why?" Martha cried. "Why today? After everything we've prepared, after everything we've shared, why now?" Daniel's face crumbled. He tried to move closer, but Martha stepped back. "Don't touch me," she said coldly. By now, family members and guests had gathered at the door. Martha turned to them, her voice shaking but strong. "Everyone, Come and see. This is what my groom and my best friend were doing behind my back." Gasps filled the air. Some relatives tried to calm her down, while others pulled Sarah aside, scolding her. Martha's mother began to cry. Her father stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. Daniel fell to his knees. "Martha, please. Forgive me. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything." But Martha shook her head. She looked around the room, her tears drying into resolve. "No," she said firmly. "Cheating is not a mistake. It is a planned effort. It takes days, weeks, and deliberate choices. And you made them all. Both of you." Silence filled the room. The celebration was over. The betrayal had been exposed. And Martha knew this was the end of her wedding. The hall, once filled with music and laughter, now sat in stunned silence. Guests whispered among themselves, some already slipping away to avoid the unfolding scandal. Plates of untouched food lined the tables. The wedding cake stood tall, but no one had the appetite to slice it any more. Martha stood at the center of it all, her gown glistening under the lights, but her spirit was broken. She could feel the weight of every eye on her. Daniel remained on his knees. His hands shook as he begged, "Martha, I swear, it was nothing. Please, don't destroy everything we built for a mistake." But Martha's mind replayed the scene in the suite over and over. Daniel's lips on Sarah's, his hands on her body, the laughter they shared in secret. It wasn't an accident. Her mother rushed forward, pulling Martha into her arms. "My child, please don't let anger ruin your happiness. Men are weak. You must learn to forgive." Her aunties joined in. "Martha, you're 31 already," one whispered. "You can't throw this away. Do you know how many women are begging for a man like Daniel?" Another chimed in. "What they did was wrong, but it's better to enter marriage with forgiveness than to remain unmarried at your age." Their voices blended, pressing in on Martha from every side. She closed her eyes, her heart heavy. Daniel crawled closer, his voice trembling. "I made a mistake, Martha. I was weak. Sarah and I. It was a moment of foolishness. It won't happen again. Please, don't throw me away. I love you." His words might have sounded sincere to others, but to Martha they were hollow. She thought about the secrecy, the stolen glances, the phone calls, the laughter they shared when they thought she wasn't watching. This wasn't a moment. This was a pattern. Sarah finally spoke, tears streaking her face. "Martha, please forgive me. I didn't plan this. Daniel and I were friends long before you even met him. We just reconnected. I swear, it wasn't intentional." Martha stared at her, disbelief filling her eyes. "You mean to tell me," she said slowly, "that you were friends with Daniel in high school, and you never told me? You kept that from me, your best friend." Sarah's lips quivered. "I didn't think it mattered. I didn't want to complicate things." Martha shook her head. "No, you knew. You chose to hide it. That was your first betrayal. And today, you proved that you were never truly my friend." She turned away from them both, her eyes scanning the crowd. "You all want me to forgive," she said, her voice steady. "But tell me, what exactly am I forgiving?" She paused, letting her words hang in the air. "Cheating is not a mistake. A mistake is when you forget to lock the door. A mistake is when you spill water on the floor. But cheating? Cheating is deliberate. It takes planning. It takes time. It takes consistent effort." Her eyes fell on Daniel. "You don't just fall into someone else's arms. You call them. You text them. You plan to meet. You build it over days, weeks, sometimes months. Every message you sent her, every look you gave her, every moment you hid from me, it was all deliberate. Don't stand there and call it a mistake. Gasps echoed through the hall. Some nodded quietly in agreement. Others looked down, uncomfortable with the truth in her words. Daniel tried again. But we can fix this. We can start over. No, Martha said firmly. If I forgive this today, you will do it again tomorrow. And when you do, I will be stuck in a marriage filled with lies. I would rather walk away now than spend my life as a prisoner of betrayal. Her father finally spoke. His voice was heavy with sadness. My daughter, think carefully. Marriage is not easy. But are you sure this is what you want? Martha turned to him, tears still in her eyes, but her voice strong. Papa, I would rather live alone with dignity than live with a man who disrespects me. God didn't create me to be desperate. He created me to be valued. She looked back at Daniel and Sarah one last time. You both have made your choice. Now I am making mine. The wedding is off. The hall erupted in murmurs. Some shocked, some supportive, others disappointed. But Martha didn't care anymore. She lifted her gown slightly, walking out of the hall. Each step was heavy, but with every step she felt freer. Weeks later, Martha began rebuilding her life. She cut ties with Daniel and Sarah completely. She blocked their numbers, deleted their photos, and refused all attempts at reconciliation. At first, it was painful. Nights were long, and loneliness crept in. But with time, she found peace. She joined a women's fellowship group at church, focused on her career, and began to heal. Her decision shocked many, but she stood by it. Because to Martha, respect was worth more than a ring. After the heartbreak and the painful collapse of what was supposed to be her happiest day, Martha chose not to let her story end in bitterness. She took time off. She traveled for a while, stayed with a cousin in another city, and allowed herself to heal. Slowly, she began to piece her life together. Martha poured her energy into her career and personal growth. She found new hobbies, joined support groups, and surrounded herself with people who respected her strength and decision. Over time, she began to smile again. She realized that being single with peace in her heart was far better than living with betrayal in her home. Her story inspired other women in her community who faced similar choices. They looked at Martha as an example of courage, someone who chose dignity over shame, self-respect over societal pressure. And though her heart once broke, Martha believed strongly that God does not abandon people who remain loyal to Him. She trusted that her path was being redirected towards something better, someone loyal, someone who would love and respect her the way she deserved. Now, let me ask you, if you were in Martha's shoes, would you forgive because you feel time is running out, or would you hold on to the belief that God can maneuver things to bring you a man who is faithful and respects you? And if you were Daniel, after betraying the woman who trusted you most, would you fall on your knees and ask for forgiveness, or would you choose to continue life with your old-time friend who was part of the betrayal? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective on this story.